Welcome to the Whiskey and Wisdom Podcast, coming to you from the Cargo District Recording Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina, where we discuss the most fascinating topics of life. I'm Tyler Yaw with my co-host, Chris Kellum, and each week we interview a special guest to learn how they acquired their wisdom over a glass of whiskey. So, sit back, pour yourself a glass, and enjoy Whiskey and Wisdom. This week, we bring back Palmer Grigsby. If you haven't listened to his first episode, I highly suggest it. It's one of the most commented and highly rated episodes that we've had on the podcast thus far. But this week, we get a little bit more personal with Palmer. But first, Chris, what are we sipping on?
This week, Palmer brings back a classic. First time, he brought us traditional Knob Creek. This time, it's a single barrel select. I was looking, I was like, this thing is crazy. There's so many little things. So it's a single barrel select small batch from Knob Creek, and it's the Roof Brothers barrel. And I was doing some research, and apparently, like when you do, there's a difference between small batch and single barrel. Did you know that? And I'm like, this is gorgeous looking, just because they keep it in the same barrel the whole time. They don't mix it with anything else. And so each one has its own taste. So I found out that different people who buy it, you can only buy like from one spot or another. And I was like, that's kind of nice. It's very different.
When I was reading about it too, I actually looked up Roof Brothers afterwards because I was like, I need to know where this barrel comes from.
Yeah, who are they?
And there is one individual in that whole distributor, and he goes to individual distilleries within Kentucky, and they only choose single barrel select bourbons, and he single-handedly chooses the flavor profile he wants to bring in to the distributor.
So we can be like, if you like this one, find another Roof Brothers single barrel, because the distributor gets to pick which barrel they did, which is nice. But yeah, it's also cool because it's a slightly higher proof because they're not mixing it with other things.
Yep, cask strength.
Yeah. But yeah, let's taste this thing.
Cheers.
Cheers, fellas.
Ooh, that is fantastic.
Pretty tasty.
That's not one you take a shot of.
No, not at all.
No, you want to sip on that.
No, yes, most certainly.
Put a nice cube in there and sip on it and enjoy the
about
flavors. Yeah. All right, Palmer, thanks for coming back on again.
Yeah, guys, super pumped to come back again. Really honored to be the first returning guest.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
And we were discussing previously that there was just more that we wanted to talk about on the podcast, and some not just important conversations that you want to have, but one of the reasons why I even wanted to create the podcast, you kind of brought up on your own during another conversation, and just kind of wanted to go a little bit deeper. So with that being said, tell us about what you want to talk about today and how that journey started.
Yeah, so I think something that's important in the entrepreneurial sphere and just being a guy is just mental health, and how that roller coaster can be pretty unsettling at times. It's kind of like, what's Charles Dickens? It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. Yep. And it's a lot of stuff that entrepreneurs don't, they feel, but I don't think a lot of them, let it be known. And definitely if you're a dude, you're definitely not going around, at least I wasn't beforehand, or nor did I know anyone beforehand that was talking about mental health.
Certainly.
It's just something that was kind of, I don't know if it's taboo, but a lot of people just don't like talking about it because it's very uncomfortable to talk about it. And it's something that I think if, maybe one person listening to this podcast can get any sort of relief, or maybe they're not alone in this, then, I think it's a conversation that's definitely worth having and, kind of putting out there for people to listen to.
Definitely. I mean, it was one of the, I guess you'd say, roller coasters that I've been on as well. And like you said, it's not just something that guys talk about on the daily, or that's really brought up in the world. And quite honestly, it was one of the reasons why I wanted to start the podcast, that we could have these serious conversations where we could all sit down and discuss, and hopefully there's someone else out there, because if it was just us two that happened to have this situation, there's someone else out there.
Most certainly. And that's kind of the hardest. It's kind of like they went through that too. Like I've been feeling that, where I used to feel that way, just something like that. Cause when you're really going through it, you feel like you're the only person that's going through it. And that's a really scary place to be. And that's a really sad place to be too. So yeah, definitely, being aware more and just having other people to talk to about is huge.
Certainly. So when did your mental health journey begin?
So I would say towards the end of 2019, early 2020, we'd been in Wilmington since 2017, and I'd worked for my prior company, UniFirst, worked for there a year and a half. And then, so that would put us in like the summer of 2018, I believe, where, just full-time went to Letters from Afar. And whenever you start a new job, whenever you move to a new city and all this stuff, there's just a constant high. It's like, there's a new place to try. There's a new place to go. There's something new to do. And then with the new job, there's new responsibilities and there's a new schedule and there's this and that. We were traveling a bunch. And so, you kind of roll this high all the time. It's kind of like it's like you're gambling and you keep on winning. Like you're happy all the time.
Yes.
Like you were just blissfully happy all the time. And then towards the end of 2019, it was like, traveling stopped, business was starting to hit its first real like iceberg. Mm-hmm. And, when you're gambling and you keep on winning and then you start losing, it's like, like, what's this?
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, because you didn't change anything wrong. You've been playing the same hand or, doing so like what, like what's going on. And, and then at that point, friendships that I'd made several friendships in Wilmington, and for whatever reason they dissolved, whether it's people moving out of Wilmington, and you're really close to them, or, it was, when I worked for my previous company, I had friends, but when you move that sphere, that goes. And so it's kind of part where just, loneliness crept in, because in our work, we're home.
Right.
Like I'm not out and about. I don't own my own shop. Yep. Or, I don't see, I don't have a service, I guess, where I'm seeing people all the time. Like I'm at home. And so like loneliness kind of creeps in and weighs on you. And then you go to the part where you don't want to talk about that because you're working with your wife. Mm-hmm. And if she notices like the business and like stuff sliding, you don't want to add on to that.
Yep. Right.
And you don't want to burden her with like, I feel business is sliding, we're failing, I feel something's really wrong. You don't want to like bring that up to her and make her feel that way too. And so it's just kind of a really isolated time where that was kind of really where it all started off.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like all the symptoms and stuff that I was kind of feeling. It just kind of started just a slow descend, if you will.
Yeah. And I'm assuming you guys were getting lonely because you guys work from home.
Sure.
And you travel because you had just come back from China.
Thailand, yeah.
And then COVID hit.
Sure.
And you can't see anybody.
Mm-hmm.
No. And, I guess to kind of go back on the loneliness thing, because I think a lot of guys suffer with loneliness.
Yeah.
For me, I'm an only child.
Yep.
So there's inherent loneliness with that. And and to compound being an only child, I also grew up in the country about 20 minutes from town.
Yeah.
So a lot of my buddies, they lived, a city block away from each other. Of course, my town was really small, but, they lived either next door to each other or this and that, where I was 20 minutes away in the country. There was no internet.
Nope.
There was no cell phones.
Nope.
So like I was just by myself a lot. And so I know having a brother or sister doesn't mean like everything's peaches and cream and they're your best friends. And like, I understand that, like, I know that, but dang, when there's not someone near your age, that's tough. And so I always valued friendships a lot. Like if I had a friend, like that was my best friend. I'd like to consider myself a good friend. Mm-hmm. And so my friendships always hold really, strongly. And so in 2019, fast forward, 2019, I was in a fraternity and in college and just all that stuff. And so I had that. And then you move from all those people.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then, like I said, the high of newness and success and all that wears off. And then you're kind of left with this really big hole. And you just really, it sounds so silly and it, looking back on it, I can't believe I was even thinking it, but like you felt like no one gave a damn about you. Mm-hmm. And I really felt that way. And this is not a knock to my wife, whom we have a great relationship, but this is not a knock to her or my family or even the friends that I have. But like, when you're that lonely and you've got all these other pressures and panic attacks and just stuff that's kind of crippling you, like, there's a point where I was just like, I don't know if this life is worth like living all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if I really want to like, because you think when you're in that, you think it's never going to end.
Right.
Or at least I thought that. I thought this is just, Like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. I don't know how I'm going to feel better.
Yeah.
And I was just like, if this is what my life is going, to look like, I don't know if life is like really worth living all that much. And, like I said, now that's, it's hard to like, I haven't told a lot of people that, but I was just like, this is not fun. Like, I feel so alone. I just don't really want to keep doing this. And I thought about this for probably 2 weeks. And I finally told my wife, because she came upstairs and she asked me something, and I just broke down and I just started crying. And she was just like, what, she was taken back. And I was just like, I've just felt like this world and like our business and like what we do would just be better off if I just wasn't a part of it anymore.
Wow. Those are very valid feelings, especially with everything that was going on, because I know for others and even for myself too, especially during the pandemic, where with my job, I even did get to see people, and then that gets shut down. And to your point too, nothing against the wives, right? Because they're always there and they're always supportive. But when everything that you did have before isn't really there anymore, kind of like you said, your fraternity, I worked with Chris all the time and a bunch of people my age. I started a new job, new thing happens, pandemic happens, you see no one, and it does feel lonely. And especially, I can't even imagine in your situation too, where your job does entail being home all the time. Because just me starting from the pandemic, being in home, I felt that insane loneliness where, is there anyone out there? Does anyone really listen? Or are my friends still out there? Do they actually care about me that now they can't actually see me anymore?
Yeah.
It's extremely valid feelings. And I have been in the same exact space where you are.
Yeah. Cause it's like, and again, this is just, my mind to just kind of, how I perceive a lot of stuff, but I'm always a facilitator in relationships. Like I will always text. My wife's telling me like, you've texted like 5 people already. It's not even 12 o'clock. But, when you're in that state and stuff, you're like, if I wouldn't text X, Y, or Z, would they even text me? Like, would they, and is that an immature thing to think? I don't know. But it's like, I think about them, I'm checking on them, or I want to know how they're doing. But like, would anyone ever text or reach out and see how I'm feeling? Like if I didn't do that, if I didn't go my way to do that, would it ever be reciprocated? And when you feel that lonely and you start, I was thinking that, and then I would do it. And then I'd be like, I'm not going to text anyone for a couple of days. And sure enough, you get no text. And you just be like, okay, then maybe I'm not, a friend of a lot, it's just what go through your mind is just wild. But you sincerely think that. And it's just, I don't wish it on anyone, man, to feel that way. I really don't.
No.
And it's sad that a lot of people do.
Yeah, I completely get it too. The one thing I always told my wife for as long as I've known her, because she always had real good friends that she's had forever. They stay really close. They text each other and whatnot. And you've brought this up previously too. Women are just better at that in general. And what I've always told my wife too is like, oh, I have situational friends. And I think I've always said that to her just as a way to protect myself more than anything. Be like, oh, when I go to this bar, I have these friends. When I go to this work function, I have those friends. When I go out to the gym, I have those friends. And that's kind of how I protected myself there. Is like, oh, well, they don't text me because they're my friend in this situation.
It's like, I just need a friend.
Like,
like I just need like, and going back, and we talked about this a little bit earlier too. It's just like, and it's nothing against your spouse, or if you're dating someone, or if you're, if you're going to get married, like it's nothing against that person, but men need other men.
Yes.
We just do. It's hard to explain, but men need other men, and we don't, and in the same breath, like we don't do a good job on the whole texting each other and asking, like, we all right? Like, are you okay? You doing all right?
Oh, for sure.
And that's something that I try to get, have tried to be better about since I've kind of, been going through all of this. But it's, it's just something that we need. We need that male bond. We need to be able to, I don't know if it's bro talk, even if it's silly stuff, even if it's just silly stuff that's like means absolutely nothing. It's a form of therapy. you know, and it's something that's very underrated. It's something that's very overlooked. And that's just something that I will always need. You know, I don't care. Like I kind of told when I was going to therapy, because I ended up, you know, fast forward to summer of 2021, I began therapy. My therapist kind of laid it out and was like, you know, it's like kind of like a solar system. Like your wife is a planet, and that planet might be closest to you of all the other planets. Like then your business is a planet, your hobbies is a planet, and like your friends, that's a planet.
Right.
And, you know, that nothing can fill, you know, your friends, your bros or whatever, like they are their own planet. And like, if that's missing, like that'd be like Mars just like being gone,
Right.
you know, or Saturn just, you know, doesn't exist anymore. And so it's just kind of one of those things where, you know, it needs its own time, its own attention, and it's very important. And when you feel like you don't have that, you know, after, you know, you've moved away from all the, you know, all your best friends, and you feel like you're starting over, and you feel like no one wants to be your friend. It's crushing. It's a crushing feeling. Like no one wants to be my friend.
I feel like that's a thing, because you're right. When you're in school as a younger person, you see people daily. So you build relationships. So that's what we're used to. And then you get into college, you don't see them, so you don't talk to them. And then you move away, so you don't see them, so you don't talk to them. Like, I have a couple of friends who I worked with, like Tyler's one of them. I got a friend, Asia, who like, I don't talk to them for months. And I'm like, wait, are they thinking about me? Did I forget about it? And I'm like, should I just text them? And that's the thing that we don't think about nowadays, is because there's always that one person who always instigates the conversation. And then if you're not the one who typically does it, you're like, wait, do I need to? Did I forget something? Yeah. Me personally, I'm just bad. I forget everything.
Sure.
Like I have people who text me and I'll like pull it up and go to respond. Someone will walk in the door and I'll be like, oh, I forgot. And then like 4 days later, I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot to text him. But now like talking about it, I'm like, that makes more sense, is like, you should reach out, because there are people who need that conversation.
Yeah. And you feel, you know, and another thing when you're going through, like, you know, when I was going through like my panic attacks and just anxiety and just stress, you have these brief glimpses of just being like guilt, of just extreme guilt. Like, why should I feel this way? Like, because we all know someone that has gone through something much worse.
Yeah.
Right. You know, like I know people that have gone through so much worse than I have. I've not lost any, like I have lived a very nice life. Like I have not lost anyone very near and dear to me, unless it was due to like age.
Yeah.
I've not gone through any traumatic events, you know, that I can recall. And so like this extreme wave of guilt, like what do I have to be sad, depressed, lonely about? Like, and that's another thing about it too. You feel so, and then you don't want to talk about it because you feel guilty, because you think you're being weak, you know, because we're all, you know, we're taught to be alpha dogs, you know, tough dudes. Like you don't want to be weak. So you don't want to admit that, you know, you're feeling this way, because like, what do you have to feel sad about? Like truly, like, what do you have to feel sad about?
When we had briefly talked about that previously too, and the one thing I thought of when you brought that up, when I was in high school, I needed surgery on my shoulder. And my doctors didn't even know I needed surgery on my shoulder, because every time I would go in, they would ask, what, on a level of 1 to 10, what's your pain scale? And I would say to them, and it was the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. It was horrible. It was debilitating. And I would tell them a 6 every time. And so my dad actually walked in with me the one time. He was like, I don't trust you talking to the doctor, because you're obviously not telling them something. I'm going to listen to what you say. And the doctor asked, what's your pain scale? I said 6. And my dad goes, it's not your true 6. Yep. How do you get that number? And I said, well, I heard that breaking your femur is the worst pain that you could ever feel in your life. So that's a 10. Labor, I'm sure, is not fun at all. That's going to be a 9. I'm sure getting shot doesn't feel fun. That's an 8. And I'm sure there's something that hurts worse than this right now. So that's a 7. So that's how I came up with my 6. Yep. And both my dad and the doctor were like, it's not based on someone else's pain. Yep. It's based on your pain, no matter what that may be. And when you brought that up just right now, talking about that, I was like, you know, I think that's what I feel, just even in a mental health situation.
Yeah.
Is even though it may be a 10 for me, I'm coming out and saying, you know what? I haven't had this, or this happen to me. I'm going to call it a 6. I'm going to sit down and shut up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, one of my favorite comedians, he's Theo Von, and he was like, everyone has their own personal Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, you know, he said that in a very funny story, and,
Right.
and all, but it's very true. Like, you know, I've known people that have had lost so many people in their lives in tragic ways. You know, people that have been in really bad family situations, and then when you come in and you're just like, you know, you're suffering depression, anxiety, and panic attacks, you're like, well, it can't be, you know, I'm a 6 then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's got to be an 8, 9, 10 easy. But it's not, like you said, it's not a scale. Like, we're not having like measuring contests of like
Right.
who's got a worse life. Like, that's not what it's about. It's like, how do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you feel, you know, I was at a 10, like, that's my 10. You know, that might not be someone else's 10, but that's my 10.
Right.
You know, and when you go to therapy and you open up about all of it, that's where you feel reassured.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's okay to feel that. And you shouldn't feel guilty, you know, because like that's just the way you feel.
Yeah.
But no one tells you that. You know, it's suck it up. It's, you know, rub dirt on it, or like you're fine, like you'll be okay, sleep it off. And that's where, and I think a lot of men, and like with social media now,
Yes.
there's like these really two extreme dichotomies where it's like you could be, and I follow both, so that doesn't help, does it?
No.
But you get like your extreme guys, kind of like your Jocko Willinks
Yeah.
and your what's the
David
guy?
Goggins.
David Goggins.
Yeah.
And then you get like your guys that are just very, I don't want to care, but just over like emotional towards like, oh, you shouldn't change anything about yourself. Like, you should just feel the way you are. Like, you're perfect, or you're whatever. So like, what are we saying to guys? Like, what are we saying? And like, when you're in the thick of it, like, should I suck it up and just run like 10 miles and everything's gonna be okay? Or should I just like sit and kind of like feel what I'm feeling and just ride the wave and then wait till it's all over? And so, like, and what do you do with that? Like, what do you do with that?
I
But
mean,
I feel like you should do both. Like, there are
Sure.
certain situations where you should just ride the wave and just feel out the situation. And there's other times you just need to suck it up. But when you suck it up, you need to push through so you can then feel the feelings.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where you're going through having that therapist. I'm sure he probably helped you with that, right?
Yeah, and you know, and what really helped me out a ton, and this is going to seem very cheesy, but what kind of brought this to my life was Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
You know, the best boxer in the world right now. I mean, every title, every belt, he won it, smashed, you know, the best boxers in the world. He completed all of his dreams by the ages of 29, 30 years old.
Yeah.
And then when he started talking about how he was very suicidal, got in horrifically overweight and just in really bad health. And when he mentioned and brought up all of his thoughts and his depression and his anxiety and his stuff, I was just like, if that dude's 6'9", 6'10", 300 some pounds, the best in his profession, if he can feel that way, then it's okay for me to feel how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Cause like, you know, and it's weird because like, I'm never going to meet Tyson Fury.
Right.
And you know, I don't know him from, you know, I just know him because of, you know, who he is. But like, that meant so much to me because it was like, okay, like, this is someone that has, you know, millions of dollars, you know, generational wealth. His grandchildren probably won't have to work.
Yeah.
But he's going through that. And he wanted to drive his car off a cliff. And he had wife and he had kids. And it still had him down that much. So it really put in perspective, man. You know, I was like, well, then like what I'm feeling is normal.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. You know, you don't want to tell anyone you're going to therapy. There's a lot of people I've told I didn't go to therapy. And there's a lot of people I told that I wasn't feeling the way I was feeling because you mask it, you know, and it's the 6, you know. How you
Right.
feeling? I'm doing great today. Like, how are you? Like, I don't want to talk about me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to talk about how I'm really feeling. I want to seem like everything's okay. So I'm fine. How are you, you know?
Can we take a step back real quick too from where you were having those feelings to getting involved in therapy, what was the catalyst for you that made you decide, you know what, I need help outside of myself. I need to go find someone to be a therapist.
Okay, so I'm very hard-headed.
As am I understand.
And so I was feeling this way around 2019, 2020. And a good friend of mine, her name's Liana. She owns the Salt Cave on Wrightsville Beach.
Yeah.
She told me about this thing called breath work. And they were having these breath work classes. And at first I went just because it was my friend Liana and I just wanted to support her.
Yeah.
And she kind of told me what to expect and stuff. And I thought, you know what, if I do this, it's whatever, but I just want to support Liana. And so what breath work is you're laying down and you're doing like, I'm not going to do the breathing because it sounds very odd. But you're doing these deep inhales and exhales. You're forcibly pushing and it's at this rhythm and this tempo. And what that does to your body is it creates extra DMT in your mind and you start to hallucinate.
What's DMT?
I don't know the scientific. There's a big scientific word, and I don't want to absolutely butcher it. But you start to hallucinate, and like your hands will like seize up like a claw, and they'll just be like tight, like you can't undo your hands. But if you fight through that pain, because it's very excruciating, it's like your hands are having insane cramps. But you fight through that pain, and you just keep breathing at that tempo. And when I had my first like kind of vision, it was I was like in this room and it was just fiery red. It was almost like it was hell.
Wow.
It was just so, and you could see it so vividly just as if you're there. And it was like this red room. And there's this thin black line that just seemed to go into infinity. Almost like anyway, it's like this black line that just goes up and down and curves. And then there was this, I could see as I was, breathing and whatnot, I could see that there's like this barbed wire ball. And it was rolling down that hill or down that road, and it was coming, and it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, and it finally rolled through me and took me. And like, and I'm not on any, like, I just want to make this clear. Like, I am not taking anything. I'm not on any drug. This is just me breathing at this tempo and this pace. And so I was associating that with pain, either pain that I was feeling and pain that I have caused. And so I started just crying, just weeping. I mean, just full on sobbing, like I'm a toddler.
Yeah,
just sobbing in this salt cave. And the lady that's overseeing the class, she comes up to me and just kind of puts her hand on my head and stuff, and just like hand on my shoulder and whatnot. And I'm just sitting there sobbing and crying. And so anyway, we come out of it, and I'm just absolutely stupefied because I was just, again, my intention to do breath work was just to help Liana out, just come support her.
Yeah, be support.
And like it rocked my world. It was unreal. And so I started doing breath work regularly, and that helped. Honestly, that helped. And because the first session was pain, and like pain that I've caused or pain that I was feeling inside. And it was like that crying was just like an emotional purge.
Right.
Just getting that out. And so the next couple of times that I went, it was a different experience. It was like I would see light, and I would see like a dove or like, green spaces. And it was very much like peace and serenity. And you would leave feeling very at peace, and you'd feel really good. And so I was doing that, and that helped. And unfortunately that had to end because the person that was teaching the classes moved, I think, to Raleigh or something. So I could not continue that. But in the meantime, business started to oddly during COVID take off and prosper. And so that, not to be shallow, but like, when your business is doing well, like, your mental health,
Absolutely.
So that helped a ton. Business started to pick up, and, you kind of start, you kind of realize that COVID wasn't going to kill everyone, and it wasn't like the beast that we kind of all thought it was.
Right.
To some people, it very much was. But, it kind of got to the point where it's like, okay, like we can maybe see people outside.
Absolutely.
And so that helped. But then this pet situation happened where we had a dog who's had epilepsy. And my wife and I, we don't want kids. And so like our dogs are our children. And so like he had the severe case of epilepsy. And then in the summer of 2021, we had to put him down after we had, you sock everything you got into vet bills and finding out. And when you have to put him down, like you take that so personally. And just during that process, I just noticed I was really on edge a lot. And I was just angry, and I just wasn't responding to things the way I normally would. And I was like, I'm starting to feel the way I felt into 2019, 2020. Like I'm not going down that path again. So I was more proactive, and I was just like, I know I can't fix this on my own. And so I was just like, I'm going to go to therapy.
Yeah.
And so I finally made the call in the summer of 2021 to go, and that was one of probably the best decisions I've made in my life. Just to take that weight off you, because there's something you just can't fix yourself. And I think men need to look at therapy if they're curious about going. Look at it like going to the doctor. If my arm's broken, I can't fix that. So like you have to look at it as something, and don't even look at it as something's broken. Don't view therapy as a negative. View it as a tool to feel better. I think a lot of people may feel therapy means, I must be crazy, or I must be irrational, or something must be wrong with me. Nothing's wrong with you. You're just being a human.
Yeah,
and being human is the hardest thing in the world. I don't think people realize that being a human being is the hardest thing in the world. It's harder than being an animal. You're not a set, like you have emotions, you have morals, you have all these things that just conflict inside you. And no one prepares you for that.
Yeah.
And so go and just look at, so when I was like, you know what, like I'm putting my ego aside. Like I can't fix this on my own. I need to, because my wife was going to therapy at this time as well. And she was kind of telling me how good it made her feel. And I was just like, I'll try anything at this point.
Yeah.
I'll try anything at this point. And so I went, and it was awesome. And it just kind of made me realize that like there's just a lot of unpacking to do, and a lot of stones to kind of unturned. It's very uncomfortable to talk about those things and bring up those things that you kind of suppressed for a while, getting over feelings of guilt, feeling you're just on an island. But it was, like I said, it was one of the best things I've ever done.
It's interesting bringing that up too, because one of my good friends, he had a similar kind of situation where his wife had been going to therapy for a while, and he was like, you know what? I feel like I could be a better person. Let me go to this therapist that I found and whatnot. And when he got there, the therapist asked him, like, what brings you here? Like, what do you feel like brought you to this position? And he goes, I just feel like I could be a better person. I feel like the more I talk to people that go to therapy, they've done better. Like I could be more successful than I am. And she asked him, do you feel like you needing to be more successful is a coping mechanism for you? And when they sat down and had that conversation, and kind of like what you said too, and unpacked those feelings of why he needed to feel more successful, there was so much more underneath.
Oh, I mean, it's like Pandora's box. It it really is. I mean, when you go in and you just start diving into these feelings that you probably have not tapped on for years. And you know what I really loved about therapy the most? And this is sad, but maybe it's just, again, being people. There was no judgment whatsoever.
Yeah.
How many conversations can you genuinely have in 2022?
Yeah.
That are completely judgment-free. Completely judgment-free.
Very few.
Very few. And that to me was super liberating. I could say whatever's on my mind, and there was no, I mean, he may have been judging me, I don't know, but his job is not to. His job is just to listen, not fix anything, just listen and not judge. And what an insane thought, but it's so true.
Yeah.
Like, if you tell your parents or your spouse, even your spouse, certain things, they're going to judge you a little bit. We're people. We judge.
Absolutely, yeah.
We judge. I mean, that's a part of being a human. You judge.
Mm-hmm.
But man, to sit in a room and talk to someone that's pretty much a stranger,
Yeah,
and just unload on them and tell them absolutely everything, it's like, you just feel like a feather.
Something's lifted. You're so light.
Yeah, it would be like wearing like a yoke with like 200 pounds on your back, and you just walk, or the Atlas, the man with the Atlas,
right.
and that just rolls off your back, and you can just stand up. And that was just such a liberating feeling, just to talk without judgment and just to be heard without judgment. And that's not a knock to anyone, but I don't think a lot of people genuinely have let everything go to someone like that.
Honestly, that's one of the issues that I have more than anything, is that if I were to sit down with someone, what's the judgment going to be? And especially with the industry that I'm in as well, too, your job is to literally get judged every day about how well you're doing with someone's finances. And politics is a huge thing in my profession, too. So that's just a constant judgment of what people are doing, whether it's their personality or not. How did you go about finding someone where you could feel like you could trust that person? Because in my experience, you're just going online for the most part and just kind of searching through. And how did you find who you found?
So with the, let's just call it what it is, a mental health crisis in this country, and Wilmington being a smaller country, or a smaller city.
True, though.
Yeah, Wilmington is its own thing, but it was hard to find someone. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, I got in, I called, and then the next week I had an appointment. I wanted to talk to a guy.
Yeah.
For whatever, that was just because I was like, I've never done this before. So like, I want to, dip my toe in a little bit. So I want to talk to a guy. There's not a lot of men that do it. And so I found someone, and kind of like what he specialized in was what I was going through. So kind of reading, his bio, or, kind of like what he kind of dabbles in. And so I made the call, and it was like a 3-week wait.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll take any appointment. Like if he has a cancellation, I'll jump in. I was like, anything. And so when I got in, Tyler, Chris, I was just so beat down, dude. Like I would have talked to anybody.
Yeah.
I would have talked to a rock, honestly. Like opening up, whether he was and he is really good at his job, but I could have talked to anything. Like I would have, at that point, you're just so weighed down, and you're just so zapped, and you just have nothing left to offer, nothing left to give. You don't even have enough strength for yourself. And so it's just like, I'll talk to anybody, and I'll tell you whatever you want to know. Yeah. Like, I just got to get this off my chest.
When you first started talking to him, did he give you anything to kind of take back with you to help you by week? And if there was, what was that thing that helped you the most?
There wasn't, that I can recall in the first couple of sessions, there wasn't really a lot of, I guess, homework.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. It was, you would just, again, feel so good because you feel like you would just purge and just vomit your feelings and vomit everything you felt out, that, you were just relieved. When you would go back, and you would just kind of want to remember where you left off, and you would just do a lot of unpacking yourself. Yeah. And that's the one thing about therapy that is also like, unlike the doctor, I want to give it the doctor kind of resonation, but it's in a sense like you have to fix it yourself though. Like, they're not there to fix it for you. They're just there to listen, maybe ask a question or two that could get to think about something in a way. But you have to sit with it, and you got to think about it for yourself, and you got to solve the problems for yourself. So a lot of it's just that, they just kind of put a mirror up, and you just kind of have to think through a lot of it on your own.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, it's so funny looking back, the things that I was really struggling with, loneliness in the entrepreneurial world, or just loneliness, not having friends, like that's all, fast forward 6 or 7 months, that's all resolved itself. Yeah. Almost as if I spoke it into existence.
Wow.
But, it's kind of like, it's like whack-a-mole, one thing, you solve one thing, and then maybe something else, another characteristic or something else you don't like about yourself, or something else that you're struggling with pops up.
Yeah.
Which is fine. That's life. You're never going to, all the moles are not going to be underground, forever.
Right.
But it's just, with anybody, you have to go in there. You just got to trust them. I know it's so hard to do. And I know, like you said, I know it's something that, opening up and feeling like you're judged, but you're going to be down so bad. I hope not. I hope not for anyone, but you're just going to, if you were like where I was, you were just down so bad, man, that you would talk to anyone that would listen.
Yeah.
Which is crazy that like we have to get to a low point before we're like, I need some help. My family, like my pop I can't even describe it sometimes, but he hit a point and he's like, I'm doing all right in life. I'm going to go to a therapist. And he realized that like, just like you, he's an entrepreneur. Anyway, he has his own business. He has a nice family. They're making money. And he's like, I need to help myself and become better. And so he started doing it. And then he's like, you know what? All y'all should do it. So like he's invested in like the family. If you want to go, you can go. And it's helped the family itself grow because my siblings are like in their teens, but they're going to therapy so they can talk through things. And it helps him grow as a person because, he's an older, like he's almost 50, but he's at that point where it's like you're unpacking all the things that you need to unpack so you're not burdening our children, like the next generation, which I feel like we need to pick up now so that way we're not putting it on our kids. Because I know a lot of millennials who are like, well, my parents did this to me, so I'm going to raise my kids completely opposite. And then that makes a whole worse generation. Sure. But if we're going and trying to grow ourselves, like before we get to a low point, then it'll help you when you do get to that point.
Dude, I love that, man.
Yeah.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. It's just, of course, I come from a very small town in Kentucky. If you were to say that you're going to therapy, just the stigma that would have, if people found out you were going to therapy, the stigma would have just been unreal.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal. And it's so sad that it's like that because it shouldn't be. And I think we're getting better. I think society is moving in, and I think with the pandemic, people are realizing,
right,
especially, for men, because men kill themselves nearly 4 times as much as women do.
Mm-hmm. Something you'll never hear about on the news.
No. And middle-aged men are the ones doing it the most. And middle-aged, your life expectancy is, late 70s. So middle-aged is mid to late 30s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Early 40s. But 4 times as much.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Why is that? Why are men killing themselves almost 4 times as much as women?
Yeah, across all spectrums too.
All spectrums. It does not matter your ethnicity. It, age, there's a higher percentage of age, but age, it's just, and it's because we don't have, I genuinely think, and it's not because they don't have good wives.
No.
What do you think? All these men have terrible wives and terrible children and terrible families? No.
Of course not.
They don't have other strong relationships with men that they feel like they can talk to in a non-judgmental way.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it is a lot of the old stereotypes of just kind of suck it up, just keep on going. There ain't nothing wrong with you type of mentality.
Yeah.
And clearly men do have those things because if it wasn't, the suicide rate wouldn't be astronomical.
Yeah.
And all of the pressures that society puts on, especially middle-aged men, if you're not providing for your family and growing exponentially every year and you're not getting those raises, society tells you you have zero value. And it's simply not true. And men do need help.
Yeah. And it's, and it's where that thing where like social media is a blessing and it's also just an insufferable curse.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because you're it's not real life.
Right.
No.
Like it to an extent, some people use it as real life, but on the whole, what you're fed is not real life. And if you don't own your own business, or even if you do own your own business, and it's not killing it, or like you said, you're not providing, or then you just feel worthless.
Yeah.
And you feel like, and you got life insurance. So it's like, well, I'm not worth, maybe I'm just worth that number. hey, I'm worth that 300,000 or 100, whatever life insurance you might carry. Maybe that's all I'm worth. And maybe my family would be better if they just got that and I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
What an awful thing to think. But I mean, thousands upon thousands of people think that way, man.
Absolutely. Especially when, like you say, when you have that life insurance number that's in front of you too, and you're at your lowest point and you think I'm not worth anything. And then someone's saying, hey, but if you're dead, this is what you're worth. I mean,
a lot of, if debt is something that's crippling you and your family, and you feel like all you've brought is debt. I mean, okay, $500,000, that solves a lot of debt, doesn't it?
But it also makes more problems.
It does. But and that's the thing that, if you're, of course, a lot of people, unfortunately, maybe kill themselves, have never thought of therapy or thought that was an avenue. But you think about, that's something you talk about. But you don't think about, it's something you just don't think about. Mm-hmm. You're so locked into this, cave, jail, just whatever, hell, whatever you want to call it. You're just so locked in that you can't think about anything bigger than what you're on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just something, and I don't know, man. It just gets, I don't know how you fix it. I don't know how you fix it. But having gone through it, I just try to be a better friend.
Yeah.
And maybe people won't text me back. Maybe they won't. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But I want to text people and just let them know I love them.
Yeah. We had a conversation just briefly before, and I kind of brought up in passing, but one of the most memorable messages I ever got was I took a picture when I was with my wife down in Charleston, and there was a friend of mine who just messaged me back on just a DM on Instagram and said, hey man, you look awesome. Like, how many times has another guy, even a close friend of you, that says like, hey dude, like you look really muscular in that picture. Like that makes you feel good. And this was 4 years ago. I remember
and you
this.
Still remember it. Exactly.
Man. And very similar to that too. I had a night out by myself, which never happens now with a wife and kids. But I was able to go out and hang out by myself, and I saw another friend, and I went up and said hi to him. And he asked if I was by myself. I was out drinking, and he looked at me super serious, and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm doing okay." And he was like, "Just wanted to make sure you're being okay and you're being safe, and just wanted to let you know I was thinking about you." And that was one of the most powerful things. I literally finished my drink and went home and couldn't stop thinking about it, because you don't hear things like that from other guys. No. And it was just so powerful.
Isn't that crazy? 4 years ago. And I think it's also, I cannot, and I want to tread light, I guess, when I go on this, because I don't want to make men's mental health seem like it's more, over women's, and women's mental health is not important, but men, I think, struggle with true loneliness more than women. Mm-hmm. Because there are some guys that may never, if you're a single dude, you may never get a DM from a girl. No. Ever. Women, on the whole, probably will always at least get a random DM.
Right.
Or a random, guys are always, single. If you're, a single guy, you're always going to probably hit on a girl. Mm-hmm. No matter what the girl looks like, a girl's probably always going to get hit on several times within her life.
Yeah.
Multiple times, no matter who you are. Mm-hmm. That's not going to happen to men. Mm-mm. And that does a lot to your ego, and that does a lot to your mentality, to just never get that.
Yeah. Never hearing a compliment.
That's horrifically sad, to never get a compliment. Not even you look nice.
Right.
Because girls will get you look nice, no matter what.
Yeah.
But you look nice, or you look really muscular in that shirt, or, and that's what men are dealing with. And something's got to change, man. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know how to combat it other than just, realizing it and just taking ownership of it and being like, I'm going to check on my dudes more.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if that means I have to blow up their phone, and even if they don't text me back, I'm putting it out there. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you look good, you're looking good. Like I saw you on social media, I saw you do a story with the wife and kid. Like you're doing all, like you're looking good. And I think that's so important, man.
Yeah.
And to go back to it, we talked about earlier, I think this is not to discredit our wives or
Absolutely.
your spouse or your partner, whomever. This is not to discredit them and to not make them think that their words and their relationship with you is not important, because it is. It is very important. But going back to social, it's a planet we have.
Yeah.
And that planet needs something. Like that cannot fall out of our solar system. Like it's important to us. And it's not a knock. It's not a bigger planet than what is for, your wife or your family or whatnot at home, but it is a planet, and that planet needs some sun.
Yeah. Kind of back to what you said before, men need other men.
Men need other men, man.
I mean, all of us know in this room anyway, that we have our wives. We know our wives love us and that they're going to be there for us. And I mean, there's probably something to be said there too, that it's almost something you take for granted sometimes.
Sure.
But on top of that too, it's just nice to know that someone who's supposed to love you loves you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it goes back to like when my dad told me this, he's like, if you can say you have 2 or 3 good friends in your life, you have really accomplished something. And I thought that was the most sad number in my life. I thought, well, I want to have like 10, or 12.
Right.
Like I want a whole squad or a whole platoon of dudes. But that's my dad being much older than myself that was a very wise thing.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to that judgment thing. Like if I just roll up on someone and just, give them an ear beating about how I'm feeling, like they're probably going to take that and be like, this Grigsby dude is like off it today. Like, I don't know if I can deal with that. I don't, But it just goes back to like, checking on your dudes and just finding those people, man, and not taking friends for granted. I did that. I took my friends for granted.
Yep.
When I moved, I guess I was just really naive, and I thought we'll keep in touch and like we'll text all the time, we'll call and we'll do. But they have another life, shocker, outside of you and your friendship. Like how crazy, but you take them for granted, and when they're not there anymore. And it really hits you, that's really sad. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of hard things in life, but being a 20-some-odd, close to 30-year-old dude trying to make a friend,
it's hard.
That's hard, dude. That is hard.
Definitely not the easiest thing in the world.
because you're like, I'm almost 30 years old. Who the hell wants to be my friend? Like, I go to bed at 10. Like, I don't get rip-roaring drunk. Like I don't party.
You go to bed so late.
I'm sure you, yeah. But it's like, who wants to be, like, honestly, like, who would want to be my friend?
Yeah.
But like I said, it's almost as if, I don't know if speaking into existence is your thing. I don't know, praying over it's your thing. But like my best friend from Kentucky, who's like my brother, I've known since I was 3, he just moved to Wilmington last week.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then like I've met so many through the girls that I'm, have helping us at work, they all have really spectacular boyfriends. And I've been able to meet them and become really good friends with them. We have a lot of interest in, similar hobbies and stuff. And now I've joined a flag football team. And so like, there's that other thing. So like, things that I thought were just so distant that I thought would never happen, or just thought that seemed so wild. Like it's all happening right now. And like, so as far as like that mole, that was plaguing me, that I just, that is gone.
Yeah.
And like, that's such a stellar, that's just such a stellar feeling to have, is not have that loneliness. Now, like I said, another parts of your mental health, like, anxiety is still something.
Sure.
Body dysmorphia for me is a big thing. I used to be 280 pounds. Now I weigh 190, but it's kind of like that shallow how. When you see yourself in the mirror,
Right.
I still see myself as if I'm like 220-ish, and I need to like, okay, Palmer, you need to cut back. So like, there's always something, that you can work on, but at least the grave stuff, is behind me.
Yep.
Right.
The grave
That's
part of
fantastic.
it's behind me. Yeah.
I'm so happy that you were willing to come on and have this conversation with us, because the way we've talked about this whole entire time, no one's talking about it. No one's been willing to talk about it that I know, from start to finish.
Yeah.
Kind of where you were, what you went through, and where you are now, and how you've been almost liberated from that.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic.
Yeah. And it's, and one thing before we kind of wrap this up is the one thing that my therapist said, and the one thing I was doing is like, you're not being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not you're being a bad person. He's like, you're just not being authentic.
Yeah.
Like when you're having a bad day or you're not feeling good, like I still feel like I have to be like the showman.
Yeah.
He's like, just be how you are that day. And like when people ask you how you're feeling, like, yeah, you don't have to give them this whole like spiel.
Right.
But like if you're not feeling, don't try to mask it or hide it. And so that was something doing this, because a lot, like I said, a lot of my family members do not know.
Yeah.
Don't know how I felt. Don't know that I was checked out. They don't know that I went to therapy. A lot of my friends have never even heard this. So this is just a practice of me just being more authentic and just kind of pulling the curtain back even a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Even just, maybe I don't tell everyone that I record this podcast.
Right.
So maybe I'm picking and choosing. I don't know,
Have
but
to start somewhere.
you got to start. Yeah, it's a baby step.
Mm-hmm.
It's a baby step for me to being truly authentic.
I'd say it's a pretty big step being in front of a microphone, just in general talking about it. So
I appreciate it.
That's extremely courageous. If I was you, I don't know if I'd have the courage to do it. So I know that what you're doing here today means more than I'll ever be able to tell you.
Appreciate it, dude.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you guys for giving me the space to do it. And I'll say this: if there's anyone that listens to this and reaches out to you guys that wants to talk, like give them my number or something,
Absolutely.
they can talk to me. Like I'll talk to him. You know me. I'll talk. I'll give an ear beating about something. But
Yeah.
if they want to reach out and talk to me about it, they certainly can, man. Because I just don't want this for other people, dude. I don't. I know other people suffer with it, but yeah, I just want to help. I want to help people.
Love that. We
Thank
do too.
you.
That's what we're here for. We will end on that note. We'll drop Palmer's info in the show notes below. I'm going to put mine below as well. We'll put Suicide Hotline below as well if you have someone to talk to. And reach out to your friends. Just say hi to them. That's the only thing I asked for this week. Reach out, say hi to them. That's all we need.
Most certainly.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.